might be. My name is Sean. I'm delighted you're joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by EY Kalman, MVP, who will cover computer use in Copilot Studio, the next evolution of RPA and desktop automation. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community and our hashtag is hashtag EPPC26. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which updates the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting website sharepointeurope.com, clicking Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, When Power Automate is Not Enough, with George, MVP, happening tomorrow, Thursday, February 12th at 11 a.m. CET, as part of Power Platform Week. Don't miss out. Register today at www.sharepointeurope.com/Microsoft Power Platform Week. During Power Platform Week, we've got a special opportunity for you to be part of the community experience. You can get €150 off tickets to EPPC 26 in Copenhagen, Europe's leading Power Platform conference, packed with keynotes, workshops, and networking. This offer is valid only until 18th of February and applies to new ticket purchases only. So don't miss out. Scan a QR code and use code PPWeek to secure your ticket today. After the webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the chat box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. Thanks. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it's available. And now I'm going to ask you today's webinar presenter. Hello, EY. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome. It is good to be here. Right, let me now work on actually getting my screen shared. If you give me a moment, everybody, this is the first time I'm actually using this demio.com. It looks very similar to some other ones, but every software has its own little thing. Also, Andy, I'm going to double down on George Dubinsky's session tomorrow. He's a good friend of mine, and he is absolutely incredible. So definitely try and attend that if you can. No idea if speakers and presenters are, saying for other people they should attend, but I would definitely recommend that. Right. Okay. Hopefully you can see
I can
my
see your
screen.
screen. Yeah,
You can see,
thank
right. Always need somebody who can see a screen. So I have been actually playing around with some AI imaging for this, just to be able to create some visuals, because I think it's quite cool for it. So as we can see here, we can see a steampunk robot who's using a semi-steampunk computer. I wasn't able to get the computer very much in, but session today, I know the title is a mouthful. Computer use in Copilot Studio, the next evolution of RPA and desktop automation. Just think of it as CUA, computer use agent. Right. Anyway, for those who don't know me, I think I can see in the list of attendees, and by the way, thank you very much for attending this live, a couple of familiar names or email addresses, so thank you. My name is EY Kalman. I am in the UK. Hello to lots of people in Europe, and specifically those in the Netherlands. My wife is Dutch, so I go there frequently, and I have actually been to Utrecht and various of the other places that have been mentioned in the chat. I work for NTT Data, one of the global system integrators. You can see my title up there. Essentially, I do anything that has a badge, I try and get. So as you can see, I'm an MCT. I'm a MCT community lead. That's the new logo for this year. I'm a fast track recognized solution architect for Power Platform Dynamics 365. I blog, probably as not much as I should do. I guess you call it X nowadays rather than tweet. And yeah, you can see that. But my common denominator is the CRM Ninja. It's my own logo. It's a Ninja on a Ninja. I like the juxtaposition of it. I ride motorbikes. I have Ninja motorbikes, which is why when I was thinking about it some years ago as to what I should do as my logo, I should do that. But feel free to reach out at any point if you want to across the socials, and I can try and engage and answer questions that you may have. As Sean said, we're going to try and leave some time at the end for questions. This is a very new piece of technology, so I can't promise you that I can answer them necessarily fully, but I will do my best. So let's start off. RPA. Now, I'm starting at the beginning of this because I don't know what you may or may not know around RPA. And RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. Typically, it's workflow driven, so with rules based. It follows predefined steps. It's not about thinking, it's about doing something for it. Now, Power Automate has been around for years, as we're going to talk in a moment, but there have been some challenges, which is why RPA comes in there. It's about looking at what we're doing and standardizing how we're doing it. So if you've got a process, then we can standardize it and we can automate it. Now, why we would actually use, I'm just going to call it RPA, right? Why would we actually go and use it? Well, if we do not have an API, that's an application programming interface. Sounds long, lots of syllables. It's what developers use to write code against to query other systems for it. So RPA tools are there to be able to handle limitations around APIs or in situations where there are no APIs at all. And the reason for this is because it mimics what a human does on a machine. It's like training a human. Well, traditionally it's been like training it. You record your actions, you go through it, and it does it. And it mimics what you as the human does. What this means is, of course, if when you've recorded it, you've made a mistake, each and every time that it runs, it will make the same mistake for it. But ultimately, it's not about interacting programmatically. It's about interacting with the UI, the user interface. So seeing what is on the screen, opening things, finding data, taking copy of data, entering data, things like mouse clicks, keystrokes, data entry. Now, generally, when it comes to systems, any type of integration, I say this, having had the scars in delivery for many years of this, I go API first. If there is the possibility to connect in with an API to connect in programmatically, you should do so. If, however, there is not the ability, the API isn't as fully featured as you need it to be, so it doesn't have all of the functionality, or there is no API at all, you're running legacy on-premise desktop systems, for instance, billing systems, finance systems, HR systems, so on and so forth, then you should look to use RPA. But when I take a look at sort of integration and automation, RPA for me is the fallback for it. Now, if we think about what I would refer to as modern RPA, actually can span multiple systems. You can move data between applications, you can get it in one system, put it in another system, and so on and so forth. Now, why would we go ahead and actually use RPA? Well, the aim is to reduce the fatigue for it, right? If we're doing the same process each and every time, we automate it. Now, if it's a process happening on the desktop, we can't necessarily use an API for it, so we should go and do that. We may want to use RPA if we're interacting with sensitive data rather than human beings going and interacting with it directly, seeing it, risk of data leakage, possibly seeing unauthorized information. If you can do it on a machine basis, it makes it more secure. There are audit logs as well around this, defined rules as to how it goes. You can't copy into the wrong place because it needs to follow how it's been set for it. Some of the important considerations around this are to work out what to do, when to use it. So you would use RPA when processes are stable and they have a rule base. You can literally write out a set of rules, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3. However, it still requires process discipline, exception handling, as well as ongoing maintenance where the user interface or maybe instead of, the processes may change or be updated for it. RPA is set in stone. It doesn't modify itself based on a system update. You need to go in and change it, which is really why we're going to come to computer use for it. Now, this is generic RPA, right? There are multiple products that are out there, been around for a while, in some cases a lot longer than Power Platform. But we have RPA within Power Automate. Power Automate is split into two capabilities. We have DPA, Digital Process Automation, which is cloud flows, as we refer to them as. And then we have RPA, Robotic Process Automation, which are desktop flows, which is there. This is the reason for it. It's the capability. In fact, what it's possible to do is it's possible to actually chain them together. You can have a cloud flow, calling a desktop flow, going back to a cloud flow. So for instance, a scenario I generally use and talk about is an invoice arrives in an email inbox. Power Automate Cloud Flow finds it, gets various information, sets them as variables, such as who it's from, invoice reference, invoice date, the invoice amount, so on and so forth. And it needs to put it in an on-premise billing system. Okay, so through DPA, through Power Automate Desktop, it connects into the desktop using RPA. The variables pass down to it. It inputs it in. It does whatever it needs to do in the desktop application for it. And then it can take, anything that comes out of that, and it can pass that back up. And you can go up and you can go down as you need to for it. Obviously, just making sure that, your Power Automate flow is performant enough. But this is the capability within it. And I know I'm touching upon this at a high level. If you're expecting me to actually do a live demonstration of Power Automate Desktop, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not actually going to do it during this session for it. But we have two types of modes. We have attended RPA. Attended RPA is when it's human initiated and it's running on your system as the user. Now, generally I'm asked, okay, great, I can get on with tasks and it can run in the background. No, you cannot, because it's actually interacting with your desktop like you would be interacting with it. You can't do something at the same time. It doesn't create a second version of you at the same computer. People normally say, okay, but what's the point of it then? Okay, well, yes, there are reasons for that, but we're not going to go into that right now. We have unattended Power Automate Desktop flows, so they can run without human interaction. They can be triggered automatically or scheduled. They can run on a specific machine, whether it's a physical machine or it's a virtual machine. In fact, we're able to make clusters of virtual machines to automatically scale as we need to run the process. If we have a process that takes 10 seconds and we have a request for it that comes in every 5 seconds, well, you're not going to really be able to go ahead and, run that. You're going to fall behind, because every time it's 50% of the way through the first one, the second one has already come in. So we can use machine groups for it. So where's the best place to go and use Power Automate Desktop, or PAD, as I'm referring to it as? Well, if you look at tasks that are high volume, repeatable, with a stable user interface, using the same applications each and every time, they're not just going to change. You're not going to, come back from lunchtime or come in after the weekend and they've, changed on an ongoing process. They're stable for it. The task, what the task invoice processing is a really good example with that, albeit we try and do that all cloud integration. But again, not all billing systems have APIs involved. So we go ahead and we would use Power Automate Desktop for it. Now, we need to think about, everything that comes in is going to have the same input, the same steps, and the same output. They're not going to be, well, it depends on this. Let's just be clear. You can actually put paths in place. It can go down path A or path B, but generally it's the same process, the same steps. Of course, all your traditional RPA engineering practices will apply. So things like handling exceptions, retries, monitoring what's going on, reporting on it, and so on and so forth. Success in RPA? Well, it's actually less about recording what you're actually doing. It's more about ensuring that your process is standardized and that you have necessary exception handling in place. If you don't have exception handling, it's going to give you problems at some point, because let's face it, the unexpected does happen, which is not something we particularly like having in place. Now, this has been around for a number of years. I've been playing with this. I've been using Power Automate Desktop. As I said, I'm an MCT, a Microsoft certified trainer. I trained hundreds of people over the last 4 or 5 years with using Power Automate Desktop, and it's a really, really great tool. But it has limitations in play. Namely, you have to keep the same interface. All the settings to be same. In fact, one of the best practices for Power Automate Desktop is you ensure, if you're starting to use virtual machines, you ensure when you record it, the resolution of the computer that you're recording the process on is the same resolution that you set your virtual machines to. The reason being, it's looking where on the screen. You have a different resolution set, it's likely to make mistakes. So there's no intelligence, right? Here is a list of things you do, and you go through it, right? And it's recording each and every one of them and showing it and what goes here and what goes there, right? There's no interpretation of it. There's no high-level description, and that's it. Power Automate Desktop is very much about the devil is in the details. By the way, I said I'm not going to demo Power Automate Desktop, which is true. I am going to do something else, though, as a demo. Right. And now we move on to Copilot Studio. Computer use. Copilot Studio is not new, of course. previous iteration of it. The name changed, I think it was about 2-ish, maybe 3-ish years ago or so, right? Power Virtual Agents, right? It's come a long way since. I should have a t-shirt that says, right, I remember when Copilot was Power Virtual Agent. So what exactly is computer use, which was announced, late last year? Well, computer use, essentially, it's a tool in Copilot Studio. It allows a Copilot agent to interact with and automate tasks on a computer. Okay. Now, you may be thinking about, hold on a moment, Copilot Studio, we're able to interact with Power Automate flows. And I've just said that with Power Automate, we can go ahead and, use Cloudflow and then connect it to a desktop flow. So why would we use computer use for it? Well, remember I said that with Power Automate Desktop, with PAD, the devil is in the detail. You need to describe absolutely everything in doing it and record each and every step. With computer use, you don't. You do not need to record and define each and every step. Now, if you're already familiar with Copilot Studio and creating Copilot agents using AI prompts or using MCP server connections with prompts, you will be familiar with this concept. If you haven't, well, we're going to talk about how you can do it. So what can it work with? Well, websites, desktop applications. It can select buttons and menus. It can enter data into fields and columns. It can copy data across. It can really, actually, depending on how you're running it, interact with practically everything, applications, user accounts, and so on and so forth. And in fact, just like Power Automate Desktop, it's designed specifically where there is no API. It's about, as a human, as a person, if I'm doing something, computer use can do it as well. I've mentioned AI. So what are the AI model capabilities? So underneath, it's powered by what Microsoft describes as CUA. Okay, I don't know if that's actually how Microsoft call it, but that's how I'm calling it. CUA, computer using agents. It combines vision capabilities and advanced reasoning to interact with physical layouts. And Microsoft says it can also adapt to interface changes. So for instance, if the layout changes or a button moves. Now, at the moment, there are only 2 AI models that are available. There's the computer using agents, and there is also Claude Sonnet 4.5, albeit that if you're going to use Claude Sonnet 4.5, it does need to be admin enabled through your tenant for it. Otherwise, it will come up and say, this has been disabled by your admin. Disabled by default, at least at this point in time. I know this because when I went into it recently and it came up with that. Who knows? Maybe there may be more AI models that are coming out, but they're not there at this point in time. And this is so new, right? This is still in preview, and I'm going to caveat throughout that this is still preview, that Microsoft is given very little information about where it goes. So how can you go ahead? Where can you run it? So again, differences from Power Automate Desktop. With Power Automate Desktop, right, you need to use your own physical device or virtual machines. And those virtual machines you need to essentially set up. There's some managed virtual machines as well. We're not going to go into it. With computer use, you have 3 options available. The first option is a hosted browser, which is hosted by Microsoft. You don't need to do anything. You just select hosted browser and it loads up a Windows image and it uses that for it. Now, it's a ready-to-use machine. It's got Microsoft Edge and native Windows applications installed on it. You cannot install anything on it. This is Microsoft provided, Microsoft use. It's best really for web-only tasks, right? Applications, not so much for it. If you're doing something online, yes. It cannot access any internal resources in your own environment, in your own organization for it. You could get it to sign in. I do not recommend that for it. Considerations around using it. Well, we can't change it because it's Microsoft provided. And it's not particularly fast, at least not in my testing and usage of it to date. So speed of the interface. And I'm going to show you why. The second place is what we call Cloud PC pools, which you can use internal systems. These are enter-joined to your tenant and allow single sign-on for it. Again, it's a Windows Enterprise machine that is provided for it. It will auto-scale to your need. So if you need more, they will deploy. And then thirdly, we get the traditional thing with Power Automate Desktop, bring your own machine to be able to go ahead and you set up your own virtual machines, you deploy them, you have machine groups, you have machine pools, and you set them up. So what does success rely on when it comes to computer use? Well, It's knowing how to prompt properly. The whole concept of you need to be capable at prompting, you need to know how to prompt it, you need to understand what you're trying to do. That is what you need to. If you're not good at prompting, you're going to need to learn to be good at prompting. And admittedly, this is true for Copilot agent, Copilot Studio agents in general for it, or interacting with any AI system. The scenarios is mostly the same as Power Automate Desktop, billing systems, on-premise applications. Obviously, if you're using it internally within your organization, you will not be able to use the hosted browser option for it. You also need to ensure that you have the generative orchestrator option enabled to be able to use this. But if I think of success, and I always try and bring some real life scenarios for it, success for me is like I deal with my 9-year-old son. I describe to him exactly what I'm expecting him to do. I don't show him, I describe to him. Or in the case of for myself, when I go out for the grocery shopping on a Thursday morning, generally every Thursday morning, I'm out there at the supermarket, 6:10 in the morning, happens at 6 o'clock. Before everybody else has woken up, my wife has set me out with a shopping list, right? It includes the item, it includes the number of things for it, it includes the variety if needed. And I'll come back and she says, why didn't you think of something? And I go, I'm zombie state, right? I've gone to the supermarket, I followed the list in order. Well, not necessarily fully in order. Admittedly, I can move around where the shopping list is. Some weeks she writes the fruit and vegetable first, some weeks she writes it last. So I have enough neurons firing at that time of the morning to be able to work that one out. But it's literally, I say, it wasn't on the list. You didn't put it. Or, I got you this washing powder. And she says, but we don't have, I said, it was the only one there and you didn't specify a brand, right? You need to be specific for it. Now here is a screenshot using the BBC News site of something that I was testing out the other day with computer use. And you can see the prompt. I know it's a little small. You can see the instructions. Now, actually, I gave it very, very lightweight instructions for it, right? I told it, go to the website. We're going to come up with best practices, by the way. I've got a slide on that a bit later. So I told it, go to the website, and I gave it the website. I said, find the news headlines at the time of running. I thought I'd be clever, right? Not find previous news headlines, and copy them into a SharePoint file. Now, fully transparent here, the SharePoint file stuff didn't work because I was using hosted browser, but I wanted to see what would happen. So I loaded it up and I started it running, and you can see a preview of it, right? This preview in the middle bit here, which you can see the screen of the BBC website, that's the Microsoft hosted browser. I cannot interact with it at all. It's just showing me what's going on when I was actively testing it. And it was going through it. In fact, what it started to do, it actually started to loop through things because it said, right, because I didn't specify which type of news headlines, right? I just said news headlines. So it started to look at general news and top news and sports and trends. And after about 15 minutes, I stopped it manually because it got into a bit of a loop for it. And then it told me, of course, the SharePoint wouldn't work because it wasn't logged in. It did try and log in, but obviously I hadn't given it credentials. Right. I wouldn't want to encode any credentials because it'll be in clear text, right, into the computer use agent. That would probably be well, I was in my own test tenant, so I'm responsible for that. But in an organization, yes, that's not something that we would do against all compliance requirements. Now, what's the reality check around this? Right? So I already told you it's in preview. Right. How can you use it? Right? It is only currently available in environments that is created in the United States region. So if you're wanting to play with this, you need to create an environment in the USA region. It's not currently available on anything outside of that. Hopefully it will be, right? If we think of organizations around the world that want to use it, right? The likelihood is they're probably not going to be on a USA environment. You need to have certain things enabled for the ability of computer use, right? And I'm going to come to some of those a bit later. I've already spoken about, you need the orchestrator, the AI orchestrator to be used for it and the capability for it. Now, currently the release plan is showing public preview by the end of May. And sorry, I got that totally wrong. It's in public preview at the moment. GA is planned by the end of May, general availability. Whether Microsoft hits that or not, who knows, right? How should you think about it? It's a tool. You need to know how to prompt properly, as I've said. What are you actually trying to do? And evaluate scenarios. And I have right at the end, I actually put up a little table, which happy for people to take screenshots of and stuff, be on the recording of this as well, but to, you know, show some consideration about why you would use one versus the other for it. Limitations. Well, we'll talk about some limitations now and a bit later for it, right? Multi-screen desktops are not supported, albeit Power Automate Desktop does sort of support them, but they're not particularly great for it. If you're using a hosted browser, Microsoft may throttle you for it based on the demand. No, you're not able to see this. Therefore, Microsoft is not recommending the hosted browser usage is used in production. Leaving aside its preview in general at the moment for it, we should be using it in production either for it. And the activity status doesn't always refresh. Things can be a bit slow. So, best practices, which I'm going to show you before I get on to the demo part of this. And hopefully this is helpful so far. Again, we'll leave some time for questions. I've got that showing on a slightly different screen. So, first of all, be specific. You saw in the screenshot that I had, I called out the website. I didn't say go to the BBC website. I gave it the URL. If you needed to go to a website, include the full URL. If it's an application, the exact name. Now, obviously, if you're opening Outlook, for instance, just make sure, it may say it's Microsoft Outlook or something like that. Make sure it's the exact name for it. Clearly state what you're wanting to do. Do not expect it to understand or think that it's something that you're wanting, right? Say it explicitly, especially actions like submitting a form or sending an email. So for instance, you could say, once you fill in the form, select submit, no need to ask for permission. Because otherwise it will say, do you want to do that? And it might pop it up to the user. Breaking down complex interactions. So for areas where the UI may be more complex to navigate, explain each step in detail. So for instance, you could say, select the more icon in the top right corner. A drop-down occurs. Once the drop-down opens, select the last item in the list. Right, really, you know, take it down from a 9-year-old to a 5-year-old. Capable 5-year-old, but you need to go and do that for it. Step-by-step formatting for longer tasks. Long instructions are easier to follow when you format them as a list. Don't just do a paragraph, a block of text. Do one dot, whatever it is, first instruction, then 2 dot. Separate it as a list for it, right? It works a lot nicer because it understands what you're going and trying it to do. Again, if I think of, from a shopping list or instructions, then think about how you're wanting to do it. So also, if you are, so you can use it obviously for interacting, you can use it for extracting information and for entering information. So for instance, if you want to extract and then take that data and email it, you need to include all of what you're doing, right? So you're doing, computer use tool, and then you're going to give it to an email tool. You also need to work on if the information and the steps you're trying to do is going to be within your computer use agent itself. So in that virtual environment, it's going to carry out the action, or if you're going to pass it back to something else, like another Power Automate flow, or back to the Copilot agent to do something. Okay, so a lot of me talking. I really like this graphic. I got it, as I said, I've been playing around and, getting some stuff generated. And I will, I came up with this, which I really like. So what we're going to do is I'm going to, hold on, I just need to find the right screen. I've got lots of screens available here. It probably helps because here's some stuff that I prepared earlier, sort of thing. So I am now going to go and show this to you live. Right. Boom. We have a demonstration environment. Now, this is a completely new environment that I created and deployed, RPA, within the USA. I haven't done anything else to it. I know, somebody's invariably going to say I need to update the browser. I'm aware of this. Right. Let's go down to agents. Now, there are 2 ways of going ahead and creating it. Obviously, from an agent perspective, what we're going to do is I'm going to start from blank. And of course, it's going to prompt me to sign in. Right, here we go. Oh, that's nice. That wasn't on there earlier today. Right, see? Good stuff. Right. Okay, let's skip that. Right, what do I want to build? A workflow. Now, here's where we could generally build, excuse me, a Copilot agent, right? Workflow agent. Or we can just directly go and create a computer using agent. That's the new thing. Now, computer using agents are tools within a Copilot agent. So what this is going to do, if I click here, this is an absolutely new one. I am doing this live. This is not. So wait for it to go ready. Obviously, live demonstrations, right, have major risks with it. It's created a new agent. It's called it Agent 1, right? New agent, what's it going to do? Right, let's go away. Computer use, right? And it nicely actually gives you an example. So I am now going to give it steps to do. And I actually haven't tried this specific stage out. So let's see what comes back with. 1, go to. Probably helps if I type URLs correctly. I'm actually putting the full bit in there because I'm giving a full URL. I could probably say just Microsoft.com or www.microsoft.com. Find the current latest title of the web page. Now, obviously, this is going to be an asynchronous process, right? And this would be in part of more of a larger Copilot agent scenario. So display it to the user. I'm just putting that here because I want it to come on my screen right now, right? It also gives you some options at the bottom for it, right? Entry, invoice, everybody uses invoice processing at some point, right? So that's why it's there. And we click add and configure, right? Literally the instructions. Now, this is the computer use agent, which is a tool within a Copilot agent. Whether you'll be able to interact with this programmatically in the future, outside of a Copilot agent, who knows? Could be something nice. Right, details, right, description. Again, we should be putting a description in, best practice. Yes, clear instructions. Right, I'm just going to get rid of the prompts, right? Use as much as possible. You've got 1,024 characters. Definitely try and use those. The model, this is what I was talking about earlier. See, disabled by admin. Now, it says disabled by admin. I haven't disabled this, so I'm not quite sure why it's saying it, but it looks like, okay, need to enable it, right? So we have Kua over here. I'm going to send Satya a note to say we should definitely call it Kua if they're not already doing it. I'll put it on the Microsoft ideas side. Everybody can upvote it. And then we have Claude Sonnet. Others might come in as well. We have our instructions. We'll come on to test in a minute because this is where I'm going to show you how it goes. But what we also have, nicely, right, we've got instructions builder. We can tell it what we want it to do, and then it can go and generate the instructions for us. In fact, now it's telling us, oh, this is ambiguous. Okay. Let's see what happens even with that, right? Okay. We're going to scroll down. We've got this nice little thing on the side here, right? Inputs. Do we want to pass any data into it? If we do, we can. I'm not going to do that. And now we get onto machines, right? These are the types of machines I was speaking about before. So hosted browser, cloud pool. If we click add new, you will see, right, you need to go and have these up and running, create these and then put these in. Or the ability to have bring your own machine, which gets in the traditional way that we would go ahead and use within Power Automate Desktop, whether it's actually our own machine, so a physical machine, or their virtual machines. We're going to leave that as hosted browser. Credentials, obviously, if you're doing stuff, you know what credentials are going to be used. If it's maker provided credentials, obviously, like with a Copilot Studio agent or Power Automate Flow, everything running will use those. So that might give a level of access that you're not wanting people to have. Human supervision is about getting humans involved. Going to talk about that a bit later. We can actually use a key vault for store credentials, access control, right, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. Now, again, let's just change the resolution just a little bit for it, just to make it a bit better for testing. This is live. So let's see what happens. There's also why I put a couple more minutes available for demoing this, because this is a live demo with screen sharing, which even if everything is working well, it takes time. So the first thing is, because we're using hosted browser, as soon as a computer is available. When will it be available? Well, they're provided by Microsoft. So how positive or not do you want to be for that? I will leave that up to you. It's ready for it. It's running the instructions. Now in this part of the window, and this is what I took a screenshot from the BBC thing before, right? It will pop up. Now, there we go, right? This is a Windows desktop. As you see, I'm actually, you can't see I'm actually clicking, but I'm trying to click. Nothing is happening on there, right? That's the general thing for it. Right, here we go. Now, considerations, and I'm going to be talking about this in a minute or two, right? A few minutes. This is slow. You can see literally this happening. Power Automate Desktop is much nicer because it can be much faster, and you also have control. Right, there we go. It's opened it, right? So it's open Microsoft, right? That's the next instruction, right? Monitoring browser for headlines. Now, bear in mind, this is a carousel on Microsoft. As we can see, that headline changes. One of the reasons why I'm trying to see what it comes out with. And it's going to think about what is there. Oh, there we go. Oh, meet the computer you can talk to. Wow, that's actually picked it up really nicely. Now, obviously, this has now taken at least 60 seconds to run. Would this happen in a virtual machine with decent number of resources? Possibly not. And it's completed. Right. Finish testing. So that's worked. That's actually a lot better than I thought it would be for it. Right. What we could then do is we could then go ahead and save it. We could test out the agent. Now, obviously, for the agent, we would need to actually put information in to the agent to do it, because at the moment, it's not going to run particularly well. So you could go to the overview for it. If we see, this is under Tools, Computer Agent, Computer Use. Now, yes, we should probably, I should really rename this, right? Can't remember where the rename thing is for that. But anyway, that's there for it. If we look at activity, right? Here we go. Now, I didn't click test here on the side. So let's see what this, there we go. We've got computer use. This is actually using the MCP, the Model Context Protocol that's there. So it's gone through it. We can go, we can see what this is, right? Ooh, block step, right? An indirect attack, right? Responsible AI restrictions. I have no idea what's that, why that is there. But again, you would go and take a look through it. That's actually happened before the computer is available. So that's on the Microsoft side, okay? It's done it. It's opened this. Now, annoyingly, I could zoom in with this, right? Annoyingly, I can't actually double click to see this. But what I can do is I can go open image in new window. This is actually a workaround because then it opens up the image fully. It would be really nice if Microsoft just let me go, double click that to see the detail, right? It's gone. I can copy the transcript because all the transcript is there, right? I can see it's now opened. Again, right? The apps, go further with Copilot. And then it's gone, okay, now it goes and monitors it. Because that's the carousel, it's now got the other one we saw. Meet the computer you can talk to. You could possibly tell it, and again, I haven't tried this, right? This is literally all for the first time that I'm running it on the Microsoft site with this specific instruction, right? You could tell it, monitor it for 5 minutes and see what goes on. And then it says, it's finished. Right, okay, and then it's filtered. Yes, because possibly I told it to go ahead and show it to me. So this, I know this is a really, really basic example, but it's that. I was actually going to show you one with the weather. Unfortunately, all the weather websites have permissions required, but it is actually quite interesting. Actually, let's go back to tools. I'm going to create a new computer use agent. Let's just see if this works, right? Because I want to show you possibly something which you should be aware of, right? So go to, right, that's for London there. Okay, fine. Oops. Probably helps if I type this properly. And the latest weather information 3, display it to the user. Right, let's go and do this. Because you also need to think of things like if you're using hosted browser, right, which is a new instance each and every time, as far as I can tell from the perspective of what happens for it. You need to think about things like, I don't know why let's put it in brackets, but okay, let's just take out the, it's automatically done the URL, it's parsed it. That's right, okay, I'll just leave it as that, right. save consent when it pops up. Okay, fine, it's automatic parser, fine, but consent on a website. So I'm actually just going to go run this, and hopefully we will be able to see this. And then a couple more slides to go through and can open it up for questions. Right, so let's see what happens. Again, this is using hosted browser. Ah, the computer was ready very quickly there. Good stuff. I also like it when sometimes when demos run slides, so it enables me to just have a quick sip of water. Now, the reason is because I was testing this. Here we go, right? Let's just zoom out a little bit. So we've got our hosted browser over here again. It tells us it's fetching the latest weather information, right? It should actually be opening up the website. I didn't tell it to, but there we go. It's got consent details on the side there. If you're doing anything within the European Union, you're going to have something, or the UK, something similar to this, right? GDPR, all the consent, all the cookies for it. Now, it doesn't necessarily know what to do, right? Now, look what's happening. I haven't told it anything to do with cookies. It's looking at the cookie consent. In fact, it's actually going to accept it on my behalf for it. Now, when I was running through this yesterday in preparation, because I did actually run this scenario to double check it, it actually had a problem with the overlay and it had to refresh it and reconsent. And it did that all of its own accord. I haven't told it anything to do with cookies or anything else. So it's going to find the latest information. It's decided, right, let's scroll down the page. This is London. This is today. It is cold outside. Yes, it was raining earlier. It may rain again later. This is all live for it. So, see, latest weather update. And now it's looking at the detailed weather observations. Again, it's now obviously, as with best practice for anything, when you're coding something like this, you should actually check what it's going to do and then manipulate the instructions. Right? I haven't yet managed to do a single time, except for that Microsoft one that we just saw, where it's run perfectly the first time and it hasn't decided to go off and find some more information. When I pointed to the news side, as I said, it decided to loop through and start finding all of the top news stories across each single page and everything for it. It wasn't particularly great, but I didn't say just stay on the homepage for it. So that's good, because I'm really glad that worked in terms of consent. And here we go, right? It's now given, well, that's not particularly great in terms of the interface for it, but let's ignore that at the level. It's run. That's really good. In terms of activity, as we saw, we have the ability, we can view all activity in terms of the runs, the successes, the failures, how long it takes. Sometimes, see, this one was cancelled. I didn't cancel it, right? So as I said, one of the bugs at the moment is the status isn't necessarily fully working properly. So I'm actually quite pleased at how that went. For a live demonstration, I'm going to give myself a round of applause. Okay, so a couple more slides, as I said, and then we'll put it to questions. So I put a brief logic flow together, right, just based on how you would think of using it. Yes, I do like animation. So first of all, is there an API or a connector? If yes, do it with native cloud integration. If not, do we know what the structure is? Well, if we know fully the structure, it's always the same thing over and over again. Power Automate Desktop, right? Doesn't go away. It's not that computer use agent replaces Power Automate Desktop. It's another tool in your toolbox. However, if we think about changes, go ahead and look at computer use for it. However, bear in mind now, right, this is, again, based on what Microsoft's saying, we should not be productionizing this at all at the moment. It's in preview for it. But depending on the industry, you may need to actually change the process to actually make it more structured, or if the risk is acceptable, because there are risks associated with these sort of things, right? Any AI thing is risk, then go ahead and use it for it. Now, the question that people normally ask is, human, can you have a human in the loop? And the answer to that is yes, but you may be wondering. So when the version 1 was launched, there was human supervision. It could pop it up to a human, was enabled. It's now on version 2. And currently on version 2, human supervision is disabled and is not something that you can enable. I don't know why Microsoft turned it off, albeit I haven't asked very deeply so far, but this is something to bear in mind. Will it come in version 2? Will they turn it back on again, or will we need to wait for version 3? It's going to depend on your scenario if you're going to need it. But how does it work? Well, assuming that you have the ability to use it, when it needs a confirmation or additional information, it will send a review request to who we've configured as the human reviewer via Outlook email, as well as an inline review card in the computer use activity panel. There is a timeout period set. If no response is received within that timeout period, then the execution will stop. Now, before responding to it, obviously ensure that you understand what it's actually talking about. In terms of the limitations, each agent run in its activity is tied to the user who initiates it. So if you choose a reviewer other than the person running the computer use agent, at this point in time, they will not see the activity because they didn't initiate the run. I know I'm totally perplexed as to why Microsoft did this, but okay, fine. We may want to think about, again, this is nowhere near production ready, in my opinion, for it. Then we get on to monitoring. How do we monitor it? Dataverse. We all love Dataverse, proper relational database, right? Computer use logs are stored in Dataverse. They provide enhanced capabilities for reporting, human supervision, audit, and troubleshooting. So you can view detailed activity, you can see the computer use action from the activity map. And when you turn this on in Power Platform Admin Center for computer use, this is on by default. If you turn it off, only the default activity logs appear. If you turn it on, then they will be there, but it will consume various Dataverse capacity. So it will consume database capacity, log capacity, and file storage capacity. So you need to ensure you have sufficient capacity available, as well as retention periods, right? Because those screenshots that we saw, that's audit, and it's stored, yes, in Dataverse. Guess how much you could blow your Dataverse storage out now for it. There are advanced logging options that are available as well. Now, we have the ability to set how much data is stored, so the complete set of the use logs. We could store just the data, but without screenshots. We can't just store screenshots at the moment, or we can store just like a snapshot of what is going on for it. We're also able to change the retention time available. It goes from 0, so it's off essentially, up to just under 64 years. I am aiming that in 64 years' time, I will not need to go and review audit logs for Power, for anything like this. Just on the record for it. It's also available. It is also available through the Power Platform command line interface. So if you're doing CLI actions, you can actually call it from the CLI to be able to set all of these. Can it be disabled? Yes, through Power Platform Admin Center or through the CLI. And then you think, licensing. How do we handle licensing? Copilot credits. Each step, so you saw when I had 3 steps, each step consumes 5 Copilot credits. 4 steps, or 3 steps in my case, 15 credits, 4 steps, 20. Of course, this is partially why Microsoft, in my opinion at least, yes, I know this is being recorded, people will listen to this afterwards, it's my opinion why Microsoft says make it very clear, a list of tasks and split it out into very, don't be too verbose, right? Because each step is going to be more credits, obviously more consumption, and the more you'll have to pay for it. So this could be a consideration around why you may want to use Power Automate Desktop instead for it. Right. And a quick comparison chart, right? And again, I call your eyes to the production readiness line at the bottom, right? It's not meant for production use at this point in time. So please, pretty please do not use it in production at all. So hopefully that gives you enough time for screenshots. We got about 12 minutes or so. So I am now going to move on, and I'll say thank you so much, first of all, for attending, but also questions. So let's take a look. What are the burning questions that we have, Sean?
Perfect. So I'll get to the first one. Does it have a recording function like the pad? And if so, could you use that as a prompt?
No, it doesn't. So you have Power Automate Desktop, right? And you can use, look, if you have a Copilot agent, again, because we can interact with Power Automate flows, if you wanted to have something that's using Power Automate Desktop and then getting and a variable from it, data as an output from it, you could, and you could then pass that in as an input to, the computer use, right? We had the ability to provide inputs for it. But other than that, it's all done through prompting, which means you'll probably start from somewhere, see how it goes, and then iterate on it and build that out, right? But it doesn't have any recorder function. You can't say, look at what I'm doing, and then do something. So no, unfortunately, it does not have a recorder. And I don't think Microsoft will bring in a recorder because it's all very AI focused. It's about being able to describe. Maybe at some point you might be able to have a video camera recording what you're actually doing, and it sees that. Computer vision can do that for some stuff, but that's in the Azure space. Within Copilot Studio, no recorder.
Perfect. The next question is, as for the prompting, basically we have operating procedure for the business process. It could be reused as a prompt to the agent, but without screenshots. Is it possible to add documents as a reference of the process that the agent needs to follow, like we do with the new joiner in the company?
Not at this point in time that I'm aware of. As in, you're not able to give it documents and it automatically pass the documents to get the scenario. You could, if you have operating procedures to do, you could copy and paste them into the list for it, but you'd probably need to change it slightly, because as humans, we look through the list and we think automatically, what we do. I mean, some stuff, I told it to go to the website, it knows to open the browser, but you may want to be specifically verbose around applications, especially with, as I said, calling out the actual name of the application for it. So no, at the moment, no ingesting possible for it to do that. It would need to be manually put across and then see how it goes.
Perfect. Next one is, if we use computer use using on-premises server, do we still need Power Platform environment to be in US region?
At the moment, yes. Computer use is only available in Copilot Studio when you're creating an agent, Copilot agent. It's only available if your environment region is set to USA. When it comes wider public preview or into general availability, my expectation is, it will go wider than that. But it doesn't matter where you're interacting with your desktop. The environment that you're running it out of still needs to be USA at this point in time. Yes.
Perfect. The next one is, and I see it's only 8,000 characters for the instruction / prompt. So it could be a limit for the more complex processes.
So the Copilot agent itself has 8,000. Yes, you are correct in there. I'm just checking to see there are 8,000 characters. I just wanted to double check that because I did. Yes, at the moment, there are only 8,000. Whether Microsoft expands that, that's based on the model and the messages that are going on underneath for it. I remember when Copilot agent had less than 8,000 originally, so I would hope, especially for this part, that they would increase it. But at the moment, it is 8,000, so it would be potentially be limiting. Yes, but depending on what you're doing, you could have multiple computer use agents within a single within a single Copilot agent, and then you could pass data in between them. So, you could do something with one series of system and pass it to a different one. You could also be using hosted browser for one, and you could be using, your own hardware for another. So you have the flexibility for it. Think about it. If I think about it in the traditional Power Automate perspective, do I have a single Power Automate flow with multiple branches, multiple conditions, and it's really, really complex in the number of levels? Or do I sort of do almost a parent-child Power Automate flow approach? I would say, look at what you're designing, possibly have it specifically for specific things, and then pass data in between them as needed.
Perfect.
But I think it's still a bit too new to know really what the right answer is. It would require some playing around with it.
Perfect. So the next one is, 8K characters is a lot, even with complex processes. Those instructions should be derivative of that complex process, right?
So I think the question you're asking is sort of what I just said.
Yeah.
For it.
Just added on to
can
it.
you chain them together and do that? Yes, the answer is you can. You'd obviously need to ensure that your Copilot agent is chained, has the instructions to chain together, take the outputs and pass it over to the next one. Because ultimately, it wouldn't be, running multiple I don't think it would be running multiple Copilot use agents in, one directly after the other. It might have to go back to the user for it. So think about your natural flow of interaction with the user and possibly break it up based on there and do that.
Perfect. Just adding on to that one. So derivative instructions, while still guiding, should be shorter and use less characters. Can we chain these things together to get around that limit? For example, with Copilot agents, we can call an agent from an agent, allowing us to chain together processes. Can the same be done with computer use?
So you're not able to within a computer use, you're not able to call another computer use agent at the moment. That may come. I don't know. So it might be a possibility for it. But yeah, in terms of what I was saying, split it up, think of the flow, think about the possibility of presenting data back to the user within the agent, and it's, them responding to it and then going and doing a second computer use agent.
Perfect. And the next question is, how is the AI credits usage / consumption compared to a normal Copilot agent?
Ooh, I touched briefly on that in licensing because I figured that somebody was going to ask something about licensing. Each step is 5 Copilot credits, whereas depending on what you're doing in the general Copilot agent, it could be there could be various number of credits for it. So at the moment, Microsoft has sort of kept that in place. Now, don't try the workaround of putting, everything into a single step. I've tried that and it's a really bad result. But you may want to think about, how much you normalize or denormalize essentially your list of instructions and combine it together with the concept of, ultimately this is going to be chargeable.
Perfect. The next question
Microsoft,
is,
by the way, may change it. And given how Microsoft licensing goes, or the whole Copilot credit stuff in general, I would expect there to be some changes at some point. In general, I don't know how it would affect this. Possibly they may look at how complex each step is and, assign a range of, it's less complex, so it's less Copilot credits, or it's more complex, and do it on a per task item. But I have no idea.
perfect. The next question is, will the Copilot learn how to deal with the site so that it goes quicker and cheaper when repeating tasks?
So in terms of cheaper, again, it's the credit cost is based on the action that's being carried out. And at the moment, that's a fixed cost. So it's not going to be able to get better at it. In terms of quicker, my assumption for Matthias, and by the way, thank you for the lovely note of support that you put earlier in the chat. For this, I'm assuming it means, you've opened up an application and knows you've opened up an application, and therefore it will load faster. If you're using hosted browser, no. If you are using your own machines for it, possibly. But essentially, it's the same as if you're using Power Automate Desktop in terms of the speed for it, right? There's very little we can do in terms of tweaking speed, other than if it's if it's the browser, unlikely. We could load more RAM, but we're not talking about shaving a massive amount of time off for it.
Perfect. And next question is, question from Norway. I've worked on it a bit myself. What I did was go to our company's website and fill out a registration form, but a lot of the time it gets stuck in the cookie section. So it struggles no matter how specific I try to be. Also, sometimes it gets stuck when trying to find buttons.
Yes, this is a challenge, and this is why specifically I wanted to show an example of it with the cookies accepting. And the behavior that I just showed to you now live was different from the behavior that it was yesterday for me. Yesterday, I actually had to reload it twice and accept it twice. I don't know why it didn't work the first time, but I'm just watching the process that's going on for it. So I think, first of all, be as verbose as possible to describe what you're wanting it to do, and possibly, leaving aside anything else you're doing, try just that in a computer use agent to see how it interacts with it and tweak it, rather than going through a whole process in which that's just the first step of the process. In terms of buttons, give it the button name. If it's a button color, give it a button color, albeit if the color changes, it will have problems with it. Tell it approximately where it is, or if I'm filling in the form, look for the submit button, look for the square, the rectangular submit button that's at the bottom of the form. Again, I'm generally, when I'm talking to people, I'm using the analogy of how would you explain to somewhere between a 5 and a 9-year-old what to do in a process, and take it as that. It will struggle with stuff. At times, yes. But it's also because of underneath what the AI does. Do you always get the same answer when you query AI with the same question? And well, I know I don't. So yes, it could struggle sometimes with that. But if you think about, leaving aside websites is nice because it's using a hosted browser, right? You're not using any applications other than really the web browser. But, it's easy to test out. If we think about the realities are you're going to be using you're very likely, like with Power Automate Desktop, to be using your own virtual machines or Microsoft provided virtual machines, and therefore it's applications. And therefore you're not going to be having cookies and the need for that within a cookie.
Perfect. That looks like all the questions. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, EY, for taking time out today. Carol's webinar. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me along.
So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/research center. Thanks again, all of you, for joining us today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Bye all.